Okay, so I'm finally gonna finish my butterfly dress, and I am sorry, but I haven't filmed all of it. So I'll be putting like snippets from my Instagram up in the corners somewhere. I'm not sure where quite yet. To like, as I sew it, I'll show like the process and everything, because this dress, it should have been done by now. However, you know, things happen and it doesn't get done. But it still would have taken a considerable amount of time, considering I dyed all these butterflies on myself, which I think they turned out fantastic. So I'm super excited to share with you guys how I did it. So I need to take it out of the box down there first. So we're gonna do that, and then we're gonna get started on the bodice. Alright, so I took it out of the box, and as you can see, it is so wrinkly. I shouldn't have left it in the box for as long as I did, and it's going to take forever to get all these wrinkles out of the silk, but it is what it is. However, I do think that my butterflies turned out so well, and I'm going to pop up the video of me making the butterflies up in the corner, so make sure you watch that as well. I dyed them on with my Cricut. Oh, I used Ritz dye, but I used my Cricut to make the templates. So I think they turned out really well, and I'm super happy with the results. Oh, I forgot to grab it. Alright. So I have my bodice pieces, and I draped this bodice on my dress form, which I actually do have the video. So while I'm sewing this, I'll be playing the video up in one of these corners of me draping it. I draped it. It is on my Pinterest. It's also on my Instagram. So if you're interested in watching those not in this video, check out my Instagram. I'll put the little caption below, and my Pinterest, I'll also put that little caption below. And so you can see how I draped the bodice. It really, I haven't done a bodice like this quite yet, and I'm super excited because I kept seeing these trends, which really is what inspired this dress. I kept seeing dresses sort of in this style, and I was like, I love it. So I'm making one, and really I wanted something really springy and just like beautiful and girly. So I went with the butterflies and this beautiful lavender fabric that I found on a Mood Fabrics. Actually, I love Mood Fabrics. They have some great designer fabrics there. Another one of my favorites is Fabric Wholesale Direct. That's a great one as well. A little bit cheaper, definitely cheaper than Mood Fabrics, but still very nice, high quality stuff, fabrics. Together, so if I put it up, let me see if I can drape it over this part. Struggling. Struggle's real. Okay. So this is the silk bodice. This is what it looks like. I have the cups that'll go in right here, which I will sew in a minute. But I'm going to sew the lining for this together first, and then we're going to press both of them, and then we're going to baste it together. If you don't know what basting is a temporary stitch that you just put in so it keeps it in place, it doesn't move around or shift. So let's do that. But I'm going to be working on the cups, and I really wanted to show you guys how I do these because these are a bit tricky. So the way I have them cut out, I have two pieces down here and one just goes over top. So I'm going to sew these together, and then I'll show you how I sew the cups together. So I have it pinned together here. I'm just going to do it at my seam allowance, and we're going to sew all the way down. Now if you haven't seen my working with silk video, I will link it up in the corner for you to watch. but you don't want to necessarily tie the ends of your, or I should say do the back stitch on the ends of delicate fabric like this, because it can pinch it and you don't really want it to pinch. So we're just gonna go ahead and so then we have, oh, it's blurry. So once you get the whole cup sewn together, it should look something like this. Since I don't have a very big bust, it won't look very curvy or anything like that. The curvier, of course, your bust is, the more rounded this is going to look. And what I really wanted to show you here in the next step was how to put the cup together. So I'm going to get my padding for the bra cup, and then I will show you how to put the padding together. Alright, so here's my foam for my bra cups. I have the other piece laying up there and I'll bring it over in a minute. But it's gonna look like this, and I got this bra foam from brawmakery.com. I'll put a link in the description below to it so you can get to it. But they sell padding like this that you can buy and make your own bra cups. I personally, since I've been doing this, I love to make my own bra cups just so they fit just how I want them and they fit perfectly. And I find it a lot cheaper to buy a big thing of bra foam and cut out my cups than it is to buy like whole cups from like Joann's or from another store, because it's just, I think it saves money and you get the shape, the exact shape that you want, which I think is very important when you are constructing your own dress like this. So the first thing you want to do is that you want to change your stitch. You want it to be a zigzag stitch. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to change it to, let's see, which zigzag stitch do I need? So my zigzag stitch shows up here because I have a digital machine, but if your machine is not digital, of course you would just click the button for your zigzag stitch. So for your stitch width, I would suggest doing it around 4, and mine's in millimeters, so I'm going to do 4 millimeters. And I believe most machines are done in millimeters. And then I leave the stitch width how it is because you don't want it too wide, you don't want it too small. So I would just leave your stitch width where it is, but I would increase your stitch length. That's a stitch length, sorry. And then I would increase your stitch width just a little bit so you have a little wiggle room for when you're putting these together, especially for your first time. You don't want it to be too small and you end up having to take it out. Having a little bit bigger allows a little wiggle room for when you're putting this together for the first time. Alright, so we already discussed stitch length, so you're just going to line it up. And again, you're going to want to make sure that when it connects like this, it's right in the middle of your foot right here. And you're going to have it on the zigzag. And you can go slow at first, but you're going to want to really press these together as hard as you can, because you don't want them coming apart when you're sewing them together, because then you won't have a nice tight bra cup. So as we're going to go, and we're going to take it slowly. Remember to squeeze them together and keep it in the center of your foot. And as it goes, it will start to curve up. That's natural. It should do that because, again, this is a bra cup. Alright, and then I just do a little knot stitch right at the end and I cut it. So this is what it should look like. And you can easily flip it the other direction if need be. So then we're going to do the top. Sit together as much as you can. And you also want to make sure that you're getting them as close to the edge as to the foot as you possibly can, because you don't really want any extra space. You want it to be nice and compact. And if you leave space at the end, it can cause issues. And if you see it coming apart, just stop, lift your foot up, press them back together. And again, it will start to curl up because it is not a flat shape. And then do your little knot stitch. Okay, so when it's all done, it should look something like this. If this is the shape you're doing, again, there are other ways that you can make bra cups besides just the two right here and the flat in front. You can make just two pieces right down the middle. You can really make it however you want, depending on the construction again. So, super simple, and I hope this was a nice, easy tutorial for you. If it was, please leave it down in the comments, and we are going to move on to the next step of how I made my butterfly dress. Alright, so we are going to do the boning channels. So my boning is about 1/2 inch wide. So these channels are the perfect length, and how you do them, you fold your channel in half, and my seam allowance is 1/4 of an inch, I believe. All right, so you're gonna take your fabric and you're gonna put the right side inside. So you're gonna fold it in half like that. So this right side is shiny. So I wanna make sure that my shiny fabric is inside as I fold it. You're going to set it in, and again, my seam allowance is 1/4 of an inch. So that's right here on my sewing machine. And then I'm going to back stitch at the top and at the bottom because these boning channels, this fabric can withstand the back stitch. So we're going to back stitch it to make it nice and strong. So one boning channel is done, so I will show you what to do on the next step. Alright, so for this boning channel, you're going to cut off the extra fabric, so you're just going to snip it away. So for the next part, you're either going to need a little bobby pin or you're going to need a safety pin. Once you have your safety pin or your bobby pin, just make a small little incision at the top. Take your bobby pin or your safety pin and you're going to feed it through. Oh no! And just gonna feed it through. Now it can get caught up here if it gets too bunched, so just release it a little bit and then it'll go right out. Now again, if you do have a safety pin, you actually don't need to make the incision at the top. That's only if you have the bobby pin, obviously, because the safety pin can go straight through the fabric without having to cut it. So if you have, again, the safety pin, you do not need to make the little incision with your scissors. So once we have that done, we're going to see this line right at the end, in the back. We're going to press it so this is right in the middle of the boning channel as it lays flat. So the first thing we're gonna do, this is blurry. All right, so the first thing we're gonna do to the cups is we're going to put the lining and the outer fabric together, and we're gonna sew around the top. Basted the lining and the outer fabric together. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take our cup, and all we're going to do is line up these seams together. So I'm going to line up these seams to the seam on my cup, and we're going to baste along the top here. And it's going to be a very, very small baste. We don't want it too large because, again, there is no seam allowance on this cup. So it's going to be probably about 1/4 of an inch around the cup. Alright, so I'm just going to show you what I did here. So because there's seam allowance on my actual fabric, I used the basting line. So I basted it at the seam allowance, and I lined up that right on the back of where the edge of the padding is, and then I lined it up right in between a little less than 1/4 of an inch, and I basted all the way around at that point. So I kept this line in the middle of my sewing machine foot, and I just moved my needle over. So I have a nice beautiful stitch. So what we're going to do now for the cup, you're going to take your lining and you're just going to fold it around your cup just like this, so it creates a nice beautiful fold. So the next step to this would be to just baste around the top, I can't talk. So the next step of this would just be to top stitch around the top of this. Make sure you get it nice and tight. You don't want it too loose up here, because then you don't want any extra fabric or it to be like all bunching up at the top. You want it to be nice and pulled. I suggest pinning it if you're new to sewing. If you have watched my previous videos, I don't use a lot of pins unless I really have to. It's a bad habit, so I do suggest that you use pins starting out. I honestly cannot tell you when I stopped using pins. I just have and I need to start using them again. So once you get this basted, we can move on. The next step would be just to baste around the bottom. So I would do one layer at a time. It doesn't really matter which layer you do first. Just make sure it's pulled tight, and whichever layer you're doing, you want the cup to be out towards that layer. So if I'm doing the lining, it's going to be pulled out this way, so it's up. If I'm doing the outer fabric, it's going to be pulled out this way. So I have both of my cups here. They're all done, all stitched up. You can see that I top stitch around them, and then I just stitch around the bottom like this. You can go ahead and you can cut off all the extra fabric around the bottom just to save you time. You can either do that, if you're not putting a lining in this, I would suggest using some sort of bias around it, bias tape, or you can serge around it. Just be careful with the padding. It might not go through your serger very well. If you are doing lining, you don't technically really need to do that part. It's just helpful. So we are going to start with the pads. So I'm just going to line up where I need the boning channel on my pad. And then I'm going to actually top stitch it right here, just baste it down. Then I'm going to put in the boning, and then I'm going to stitch it because my boning channels are very tight and I want to make sure that I can get the boning in. So I'm going to be doing my boning in first before I stitch it down. Typically you would want to do that the other way around. You'd want to stitch it down and then put your boning in. But because I miscalculated, I need to put my boning in first. One more thing I did want to share with you about the boning is that I would suggest you finish off the ends of it because you don't want it to poke through your fabric and poke you like a wire in a bra. If you're using a synthetic boning like polyester like me, you can actually just take a lighter and melt the ends of it. I would suggest letting it cool before putting in your fabric, of course. But if you don't have a lighter, you can just encase the ends of it in fabric and stitch it down. Works just as well, and it just makes it nice and soft so it doesn't stab you. Alright, so as you see, I finished my cups, so here they are. This is what they look like. They will be going in like this. I'm actually really proud of how they turned out. I think they turned out really good. So now the next step would be to attach them to, So now the next step would be to put the boning in the bodice. So we are going to do that. So I opened up little channels right here for me to feed the boning in, and I can close it up right there. I forgot to put them in. So we're going to do that. We're going to insert boning channels in here. Then we're going to close it up. We'll press it one more time with the iron. Then what we're going to do is we're going to close it like this. And we're going to sew the boning down and insert the boning in. Alright, so you can see I have my boning channels in. They aren't sewn down or anything, but it is time to put in the cups before I do anything else. So I have my cups here. The smaller side goes towards the middle, so I'm going to line them up. And again, the way I designed this, my middle piece right here lines up with my seam right on the bottom of my corset top. So I'm going to pin it there first so I know exactly where it needs to line up, and I know that it matches correctly. I also need to insert a boning channel in here. Alright, so I'm going to do these one at a time because I don't want to drop this or have it fall out. So I'm going to do it one at a time. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to start from the center here and work my way out. Just makes things easier, and I know that they're going to line up perfectly if I do that. So let's get sewing. Alright, so I have my cups in place. So as you can see here, I sewed them in. All I did was exactly what I said. I pinned them right in the center right here, and then I sewed this way and this way right at the seam allowance. So when you hold them up, it actually starts to look like a corset top. So what we have to do now is we are going to sew this down. We're going to sew the seam allowance right here down along the edges of the cup. Once we have that done, we're going to close it up. So how you do that is you're going to take this lining right here. You're going to, now you can do this one of two ways. You could take it right here, place it like this, just like you did the other side, and then sew it along the bottom, or you could press it down at the seam allowance with an iron, pin it into place, and then as you're top stitching around the other end, you'll be stitching this in place as well. So either way works, whatever your preference is. I think I am going to stitch this in place first, and then I'm going to top stitch around it. Alright, so my cups are in place. I did the first way, I believe. I sewed in this top part here, and then I sewed in the lining, and then I top stitched around. So they're all in place. Everything looks good. I got some loose threads I need to cut. Some tailoring I need to work on still. But other than that, it looks really good, and I can move on to the next step, creating the back modest panel for when you close it up. So we are going to need, alright, so for the back panel, you're going to need a lining and an outer fabric. I'm just using this purple fabric because I wanted the contrast for my garment. But you're going to put right sides together, and you're going to sew along here. So you're going to leave the top open and just sew all the way around here. If you have sew-in interfacing, you can use that as well if you want it a little bit stiffer. I do not have sew-in interfacing. I just used it all, and I don't think I need it for this garment because this is pretty sturdy fabric. So I will not be, but if you're using more delicate fabric or you just feel like you need the extra support, go ahead and use sew-in, or you can use fusible interfacing and then sew this up. Once you have it sewn around your edges, you're going to want to cut these corners. Alright, once they're cut, if you want to, you can snip away some of the excess seam allowance. That just reduces the bulk and makes it lay a little bit flatter. And then you will want to press it down and probably edge stitch around it so it lays nice and flat and it won't move around. Alright, so what you're going to want to make now is your little loops for your back. Now you can actually buy corset looping, however I wanted it to match my dress, so I'm making my own. So if you want to do that as well, you're just going to cut strips out, and I'm actually using the excess boning tunneling for this. So you're going to cut strips out as long as you really want them, and then you're going to take the side that has the seam on it, you're going to fold it in like this, so that when you flip it up, you only see the nice flat and you don't see any seam. And then all you're going to do is just baste right at the base of it so it keeps its shape. Alright, so once you get all of your little loops done, you're going to want to take another boning casing, and this is going to go right on the end of your fabric for strength and support. Oh, we got a pin there, okay. And then you're going to just fold it over once to hide that rough edge. Stitch it in place, or you can stitch across here to keep it in place, and then you're going to insert your boning and do the same thing on the other end. Just fold it down, stitch in place, and then you're going to take your loops and you're going to sew them down to your boning strip, just like this. And I would suggest taking a ruler and marking them so they're nice and even, or if you're using a pattern that you created, I would suggest marking them on the pattern so you know exactly where you want to put them. One more thing I did want to say about this is that this is just going to be a basting stitch, because you are going to actually stitch down both sides of this boning. So the stitch you use right here is going to be temporary, just to hold it in place while you sew it down to your garment. Alright, so the finished product should look something like this. There is a lot of extra threads around just because I have to snip them all off, but it should look something like this. And then the next part would be to line it up on the ends of your garment like this. And then you stitch it down on either side. And then you are ready to put the rest of the boning in, and then you can close it up. So let's get to it. Alright, once you have them in, it should look something like this, and you can cut away all your ties and then pull out that middle seam, which I think I might do a little later off camera because it's going to be a chore to pull off, let me tell you that. Alright, so the next step would to be to top stitch around. So my boning channel is, I'm not going to top stitch that down because it won't look funny, so I'm just going to top stitch with it out like this, go around, and then I'm going to put my boning into each of these channels, fold it down, stitch in place, and then we are ready for the modesty panel and the skirt. So let's get to it. Alright, and I'm about to attach the modesty panel. Now I have it pinned in here, and I'm going to do the stitch in the ditch method right along the seam here. I did want to say that I will not be sewing all the way to the end because I do need to attach my skirt right here, and I do not want my modesty panel caught within, so I'm going to end this stitch right at the end of my last loop here. Alright, so my modesty panel is in, and it is time to insert the boning, and then I'm going to do the same thing I did on the ends here and just stitch along the edge, and then I am ready for the skirt. So let's get attaching to, or let's start inserting the boning. Next thing you're going to want to do, you're going to want to place it up on your mannequin or model or whatever it is you're using. you're going to take a piece of chalk, and I'm going to squeeze it as much as I can so it's nice and tight like it would be on me. I'm going to mark where I put my slit. So my slit is right here on the side of my dress. So I'm going to mark it here so I know where it is and I can line it up properly when I am sewing it in place. Now the skirt is just a half a circle skirt that I cut down one side so I could put a slit in here. So it's not a super complicated skirt, it's just half a circle skirt. If you need a circle skirt calculator, you can find one at By Hand London. That is the one I use all the time. ByHandLondon.com is fabulous. It gives you the options for a long or a short skirt or a midi skirt. Then you can put your waist measurements in and it gives you how much fabric you need and the radius for your skirt. I love it, so that's a great resource. I will link it down below for you so you can also use it if you decide to make a project like this. So let's get sewing. We're going to attach the skirt to the top. Just want to show you real quick how I attach the skirt to the bodice. So it is similar to the way we attach the cups. So what you're going to do is you're going to lay right sides together. See, this is my bodice. My skirt is flowing out. And this is the bottom of my bodice, and I have pinned it so that the inside of the garment is facing each other. So the same with the lining, it is facing out. The inside of it is facing out just like with this. And then we're just going to stitch along the top, and you can serge this if you want to serge it, you can. I probably will not be. But you can serge it and make it all pretty. I'll probably finish it another way, either by zigzagging it or pinking shears. You can do that. If you don't have a serger, you just don't want to serge it. So let's get this sewn together, and then we will attach the skirt together and we'll hem it. Once it is sewn together, you can sew the slit together. So all you're going to do is open it up where your slit is. Line the slit up right at the top, and then all you're going to do is sew down that line. So where your seam allowance is, once you've got it pinned, all you're going to do is continue that line where you left off, so all the way to the bottom, and then you can close up your dress and hem it. I will be closing it up the same way I did most everything else. I'm going to back stitch, go all the way up. I'm going to leave about, I'm going to say 5 inches of clearance at the top, and I'm going to then press it. Alright, so the last two things I wanted to share with you guys about the dress is right here where I had the slit. I wanted to show you, I sewed it together. Let me pull it up like this. So it's sewn together. And then I stitched it down and back on the lining. This is all done for most professional done dresses that have a slit like this. They always sew the seam allowance to the lining. It just helps it lay nice and flat. So that is one more thing I did. I didn't do anything super fancy for the seam. I serged around all the skirts, so I just folded it up and stitched it down. And the back looks like this. So I made the ribbon out of the silk of the dress. So it turned out very nice, and I'm super excited, and we're gonna try it on. Ready? Woo! Alright, so the last thing I want to say is thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel for more content on fashion design and sewing. And I am really loving this dress. I feel like a princess. I have absolutely nowhere to wear it to. But you know what? Maybe I'll just wear it around Miami. If you guys want me to wear it around Miami, just leave a comment below. Thank you so much. Again, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you don't miss a video, and I will see you all in the next video.